All right, welcome back to another episode of Writer's Block. I am your host, as always, journal staff writer Sean Reider. Today we have the second episode of our 12-episode series previewing every team in the Mountain West, every football team, every football program. We'll be running them weekly this summer. We already had Nevada covered last week with the great Chris Murray. But today we're covering Wyoming football with Alex Taylor, Wyoming beat writer for WyoSports.com. Alex is one of my favorite beat writers in the entire league. He's a guy I've grown to be really good friends with. He does great work covering Wyoming football, basketball, just everything up there, frankly. So if you're interested in his work, please check it out at WyoSports.com. And if you're looking to keep getting some New Mexico football updates, because we will be having some stuff coming out this summer, you can find our work at abqjournal.com. Very much encourage you to subscribe and support the local coverage and the like. But that being said, really hope you enjoy our conversation with Alex.
If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
All right, I am pleased to be joined by the great Alex Taylor, Wyoming beat writer for WyoSports and a fellow Michigan native. I look forward to seeing Wyoming on the schedule for New Mexico because I get to see Alex and Cody, and I love talking with those guys. I love hanging with them. Looking forward to seeing them in Vegas this summer, by the way. But I checked on this right before we came on, and this kind of blew my mind. This is the first time since 2004 that New Mexico will not play Wyoming, which is just so bizarre to think about.
Yeah, you know what's funny is we were over here in Laramie. We were joking about this. Wouldn't it just be the most hilarious thing if, like, New Mexico and Wyoming found a way to play each other in the Mountain West Championship? The last,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
All those Pac-12 schools are in the Mountain West. Just give them one last see you later on the way out.
Yeah, no, it feels like it has to happen now. It really does. But to get into it, Wyoming went 3-9 overall last year, 2-5 in league under first-year head coach Jay Sawvell. Notably, at least from a UNM perspective, dropping its second game of the season to the Idaho Vandals, coached by none other than Jason Eck. This isn't a pod about last season, but what do you kind of remember about that game in particular? Because you were up close at War Memorial.
Yeah, it's funny talking about Wyoming and New Mexico not playing this year. That would have been a hilarious one. Jason Eck obviously knows how to win in War Memorial Stadium.
Yeah.
We saw that last year. I think that was kind of so I think at that point, like, obviously the more time that goes by, the more you can kind of process things that happened last year. But I mean, I think coming out of that Arizona State game, I mean, obviously they got kind of whomped out there in the desert. And at the time it looked like a bad loss because Arizona was bad. And then Arizona goes on to make the playoffs. And so that was a little bit of a kind of throw that game away. And then you come home and then lose to Idaho immediately after. And that's kind of when the red flags start kind of waving in the air. And really, their offense, I mean, I think what was it, 17-13 was the final score, I think. And
like 17-14 or something like that,
yeah. And I think, I mean, they had I think the more, again, like the more time that goes by, you can kind of process this a little more too. I mean, Evan Svoboda took a lot of blame for poor quarterback play, really the entire season, but specifically in that game. And I mean, I remember those last two. They had plenty of chances. I mean, I think it was 17-13, like the whole fourth quarter. Like, I don't think anybody scored in the fourth quarter, if I'm remembering that right. I mean, they had the ball at least 3 or 4 times with a chance to score, and they couldn't get first downs. And I think that was, like I said, I mean, I think that's kind of that's when the warning signs just kind of started flaring up, and I think they'll started 1-5 or 0-4 or something like that. So I mean, that was kind of the start of, oh boy, what are we in for this year? Because I mean, it hadn't happened before. I mean, like Wyoming historically, like I know you got to cover that New Mexico, I think Montana game.
New Mexico, Montana State, yeah.
Or Montana State, yeah. I mean, Wyoming historically just plays these FCS or schools like super close for really no reason. I mean, I think like Craig Bull was like we kind of me and Cody joke about it. Like Craig Bull was a little hesitant. Like he was afraid to like step on a coach's neck basically. And, like go up 2 scores and just breeze to a win at home for your home opener against an FCS team. And that just was not the case. So I mean, I think a lot of credit to Jason Eck too. I mean, I'm sure that video didn't sit well. That would have been another hilarious part of Wyoming and New Mexico playing this year. Is I remember Idaho posting the video of Jason Eck celebrating in Wyoming's locker room, and they were not celebrating in Wyoming's locker room. The home team was not.
Yeah. No, that video of him dancing locker room. I mean, the day I found out that Eck was a guy that was being looked at in the coaching search, that was the first thing I thought of. Like, oh yeah, like he did that. But Wyoming did, of course. They beat New Mexico last year, and I mean, we'll talk about in a little bit. One of the most entertaining games I saw all of last season. And then, had a really tough border war loss and then bounced back to play Boise really, really tight. I think that was like a 17-14 game too, something like that.
Yeah.
And then knocked off Washington State in the season finale. With all that in mind, and that was, like credit to Wyoming for that. That was also just an ugly collapse from Washington State down the stretch. Yeah. But all that in mind, what is the mood around the program heading into Sawville's second season?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of turnover just in terms, maybe not, I mean, obviously every roster in the country is going through roster turnover, but just in terms of like leadership. And I think there was a couple coaching changes that stuck out. I mean, the longtime wide receiver coach, Mike Grant, was not retained, which, I mean, if you kind of put 2 and 2 together of how that kind of came about, just with some of the things Sawville has said. I mean, he obviously hasn't directly addressed that situation, but I mean, he said like last year, wide receiver was a leaderless room for Wyoming, and that kind of, I mean, defensive tackles, he didn't retain Jeff Phelps, the defensive tackle coach. He was only here for a year, so I think those two moves were kind of I kind of said this the other day too, is I think Sawville kind of learned so many lessons so quickly that like you don't really have a ton of time to process them during the season. And so then you got to keep in mind too, like this was his first year as a head coach. I mean, he was at DC for forever. So a lot of the time, I don't think he was used to having to make these decisions of coaching hires and stuff like that. So I think the expectation level is a lot higher in terms of what they expect out of seniors and key players and coaches. And I think that leadership, you kind of see that. I mean, obviously any team that's 3-9, I mean, they're not going to be happy going into spring ball, but especially at a place like Wyoming where it's kind of the standard. Craig Bull obviously kind of made it this Wyoming standard to win 6 or 7 or 8 games and go to a bowl game. So just I was talking to the strength coach a couple weeks ago, and I actually had never thought about it before, but he's like, yeah, it sucks the worst about not making a bowl game is you have like an extra 3 weeks off. Like you lose all those practices. And so basically the kids just go home.
Yeah.
Like 3 weeks early. And so it's basically up to them to work out on their own, like wherever they're going home to. And then luckily, like from the sounds of it, that everybody was able to do that on their own. But that's something Wyoming hasn't experienced a lot in the last 10 years or so. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
No, and like it was something I try to like keep an eye on like throughout the season too. It's like the way you do it, it's like social media, and social media is not always an accurate way of an accurate depiction of the fan base as a whole, but because it's always the loudest voices, whether they're positive or negative, are amplified the most. But like, that is a really stark and weird change. Like when we were talking like last July, like Circa or whatever, I think we all kind of were like, yeah, like some things got to go right, but like, they got it, they probably have enough to make a bowl game and stuff like that, or just miss a bowl game. To go 3-9 after years and years of Craig Bull consistency, where you can kind of question, how high the ceiling actually is, but you can't question the floor whatsoever. What did that like do to the fan base overall? Where are they kind of at?
Yeah, I think, I think with any fan base, I mean, obviously they're as passionate here as anywhere, especially about football. And so you kind of see, I mean, of course you're going to see the ugly side of I just remember one thing that sticks out to me the most about last year was I brought up Evan Svoboda, but like I remember that Utah State game, they were doing that 2 quarterback system with Caden Anderson and Evan Svoboda. And I just remember I was sitting there in the press box watching, like, Evan Svoboda's helmet came off they put him in on like a goal line run. His helmet comes off. He's like going to grab his helmet, and he's right in front of the student section, like right in front of the home fan. He gets booed off of the field at a home game. And that was tough to grasp. I mean, especially and it was so cool for him to come back in that Washington State game. And obviously Caden Anderson had gotten hurt. So Evan comes in and throws a game-winning touchdown against Washington State, and is probably his last throw of his career. So it's kind of cool. But just in terms of the fan base, I mean, I was kind of writing about this the other day too, is I think what's unique about a place like Wyoming is, and obviously you know this growing up in Michigan, like I went to a MAC school. So like if a MAC school, if Western Michigan goes 3-9, they're not going to have 26,000 fans at their home opener next year. And I think that's what kind of sticks out to me the most is, I mean, they were 3-9, and I bring up that Utah State game, and that's late in the year. I think they were 1-7 after that game. And there's still over 20,000 people at this game. So I think the support is still there. And I know, obviously when you talk about fan reactions and social media, I mean, obviously the first guy on the chopping block is always going to be the head coach. And, I mean, it's just not really, like, people are obviously like, they lose to Arizona State the first game of the year, and there's like a couple people are like, oh, fire Salvo. It's like, and then you start like looking into it. It's like, yeah, I mean, here's what the buyout is. It's all guaranteed. He's not getting fired after 1 year. So I'm sorry to burst the bubble, but I don't know. I don't know what the leash is, I guess, for that, but that was obviously the easy target for fans last year.
Yeah, G5 athletic department economics go a long way in that regard. You did touch on them a little bit, and I did want to kind of use that to segue into some positional stuff. I did mention last year's New Mexico-Wyoming game. I know it wasn't fun for probably the core audience's podcast, New Mexico fans, watching it. That was, as kind of an impartial observer, that was a blast to watch in a lot of respects. That really long, damp year TD. And then the guy that kind of stole the show, Caden Anderson, first career start. He had played it, that season before that game, but first career start in University Stadium. I think he had like 342 yards, 3 TDs, 1 INT. Just a pretty unbelievable performance in a lot of respects. I don't care how mediocre to bad New Mexico's defense was last season. I know Salvel does not want to name a starting quarterback until fall camp this year, but is Anderson the front runner, or how are you kind of looking at that room right now?
Yeah, I mean, Caden's definitely the starter. I'd be shocked if he's not out there that first series against Akron. I mean, he's obviously done all the right things in the offseason, just again leadership wise and in his own personal development, and he's taken on. And I kind of was jokingly asking Salvel in the spring. I was like, how far has Caden Anderson come as a leader, like now compared to this point last year in the spring? I mean, obviously he wasn't a leader. He was third string quarterback coming off. He was still coming back from that ACL, suffered in high school, his ACL injury. And so it was obviously night and day to not where it's, literally like he was the third string quarterback until probably week 5 or 6 of the year last year. So like, it's not even a name. It wasn't even on anybody's radar. And then you see Evan Svoboda struggle throughout the year, and obviously the idea of bringing Caden Anderson in kind of comes up probably 4 or 5 weeks into the season. And then, like I mentioned, that 2-quarterback thing against Utah State, and then finally they just kind of let Caden go against New Mexico. And obviously we both saw what that looked like. And it's hard for me to put any, I guess, expectations on a guy like Caden Anderson just because he's so young. And it's, 3 career starts. I don't want to fall into the trap of, I guess, just not knowing. I guess I just don't know what you're going to get out of him just because, like you said, he started 3 games. New Mexico wasn't known for their defense last year. I'll just leave it at that. And then obviously you go into that he did not play well against Colorado State. huge border war game, and obviously the entire offense didn't play well, but that was not a good game. And then you turn around and I was just saying this on another show the other day. I mean, if there's a really good chance that if Caden Anderson doesn't get hurt against Boise State, that Boise State does not make the playoffs. Like they could have very easily lost that game. I know Genty was also hurt in that game at different points, but like he had, and it was weird too. He just got a random concussion, and he actually went in for another series because they didn't catch it right away. And that's like he like didn't signal a receiver or something. So I was like, what are you doing? And so they took him out at halftime. But again, like I don't like he's for sure the starter, and I think that leash will be pretty long again. Just from like a depth standpoint, I don't know. I know Landon Sims is. I would say right now, if the season started right now, Landon Sims would probably be the backup. He's a JUCO transfer, and then Mason Drew will probably be third. But that's a Wyoming guy, so true freshman out of Gillette, and Salvel's kind of already said like this is. I mean, obviously not this year, but once like after Caden Anderson's time here is done, I mean it's going to be the Mason Drew show at some point. And I mean that's also good storyline to watch for fans out here in Wyoming next couple years.
I know another guy that made a huge play in that New Mexico-Wyoming game, Harrison Whaley, who I thought when he was healthy was one of the best backs in the league, and this is a league that has had a lot of really good backs recently. I think he transferred to Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Jamari Farrell is also out, I'm pretty sure. Dwayne McNeely, who didn't play a ton last year, if I remember, is also out.
He played 2 snaps and got hurt on both.
Yeah.
And, he's in the portal, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if Farrell or McNeely are anywhere. Who is running the ball for Wyoming this fall, though?
Yeah, I think Sam Scott's for sure going to be in the rotation. He ended up being their leading rusher. I mean, I think he had like in the 400s for total yards, so obviously not a 1,000-yard back or anything, but he was their main guy when Whaley was hurt last year. But I think Teron Kelman, Charlotte transfer. Sam Scott did not participate in the spring, and I think that might hurt him in the rotation come fall camp, just because Teron Kelman was with the first teams, if you want to call it that, in the spring, and he looked, I would say, probably the most explosive just from a running back standpoint. I know Nico Hamilton looked pretty good, but he struggled to hold on the ball. He fumbled multiple times. Salvel kind of had to address that after one of the practices, and then Dante Birch also looked good. But they brought in a couple new guys, North Texas guy, and then Max White out of Iowa. Both of those guys obviously weren't here in the spring, but you can kind of tell if a coach is adding to a position after the spring game.
Yeah,
that obviously is a kind of an indication that there was something missing, or they just wanted to bolster it, or whatever it is. So I wouldn't be shocked if those two names are one, like something that Salvo brings up first couple weeks of fall camp, and it's like, yeah, I'm really glad we got this guy, but we'll see.
Believe second team All Mountain West tight end John Michael. How do you pronounce his last name? Gellenborg. Okay, he's back, and that seems like a huge development because he's a darn good tight end. And then how big is it not to just get him back, but Jalen Sargent and Caden Durr, wide receivers as well?
Yeah, I think first of all with Gellenborg, like he's I haven't experienced this here, and going into my 4th season, I mean I haven't seen like NFL hype, I guess, going into a season for a guy like I have for John Michael Gellenborg, and that's not me saying that. I mean, this is like his tight end coach, obviously his head coach, his quarterback, saying that like everybody that has to guard him, like the safeties are all like they're legitimately saying like he's the best tight end in the conference, but then also one of the best in the country. So I don't know. Again, I as like a reporter, kind of unbiased here, of like you kind of have to see it because he's been like he hasn't had a full season yet, and so I have no doubt that if he is able to stay healthy, he's probably a draft pick at some point, just based off of size and athleticism and strength and everything that way. But just in terms of the offense, I mean that like he's a guy that'll I would guess like probably 8 to 10 targets a game.
Yeah.
If in an ideal world, I mean, obviously depending on matchups or whatever, but him complemented with like, so Jalen Sargent, Wyoming hasn't had, this shocked me when I wrote it a couple weeks ago. Like Wyoming hasn't had a 1,000 yard receiver in like 8 years or 9 years or something like that. And I mean, that's kind of Jalen Sargent territory. He would have, he had couple big plays against New Mexico in Albuquerque. But he's obviously that deep ball explosive outside guy. And then Chris Durr, coming off a true freshman season, I think he had somewhere around 40 catches or something. I mean, he's kind of the slot merchant, the Cooper Kupp of the of Wyoming's offense, which he's not a big guy, but obviously he showed last year. Was that New Mexico when he had that one-handed catch on the Sports Center top 10 play?
It might have been.
I think, yeah, he was like, Caden Anderson was like throwing it out of bounds, and I think Chris Durr just like literally reached up and caught it, and he made like Sports Center top 10 play. But that's kind of his what he brings to the table, I guess. And I think those three weapons to pair with like a historically kind of a run heavy, run reliant offense.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of potential, and that's not me like blowing smoke. I guess this is just word of mouth here from what people are telling me. But I mean, I'll say this one time, I don't think it can be worse than last year. So that's kind of the bar.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that too. That's kind of how I'm looking at like New Mexico's defense at this point too. Like I just don't think it can be worse than last year. I don't think it can be. I know you got Wyoming's got two good pieces coming back, two really good pieces coming back on the offensive line, Jack Walsh and Caden Barnett. Just kind of overall, with this offense, I mean, what you saw this spring, like what do you think this team's biggest strength will be offensively?
Strength would probably be outside. Like I think wide receiver was Salvell took a huge issue with that wide receiver room last year, from coaching to the senior leadership to the actual performances on the field, guys not getting open, guys not blocking. I mean, there's a lot of guys on last year's team that are no longer on this year's team. I mean, obviously there was like TK King going to New Mexico State is one that you think like, oh, they lost an All Mountain West guy to the portal, but that's not always the case. Like same with Justin Stevenson. I think there's there was just changes that needed to happen, and obviously they kind of revamped that room a little bit. And Jalen Sargent was not a leader last year. He didn't have to be a leader. He was a junior. There was other guys kind of above him, and now like that's his room. Like he's going into his last year. Like that's become very clear from Salvell that basically what happened leadership wise last year is just not acceptable, and that which led him to I'd never heard of this. They're not voting for captains this year.
Really?
Yeah, they're just gonna send some random person out to do the coin toss every game, but like because he said that like because you do 4 team captains, and then like if you're not one of the 4 guys, that you just stop leading because you don't think your teammates think you're a leader or whatever, and then so he doesn't want to deal with the headache, and he basically said like I don't want 4 leaders, I want 25, which I think in spring ball, obviously they haven't played a real game yet, but you can kind of sense that like you talk to a guy like Jack Walsh on the offensive line, he doesn't want to be a team captain, but he wants to lead multiple guys and kind of have them under his wing. And I think you're seeing that out of a lot of guys this year that you didn't see step up last year. And I think that's what Salvell was going for, versus 20 leaders instead of 4 could make a big difference.
On the flip side, I mean, I don't know if you should call it a weakness or anything, because it's spring ball, and you really only start to see a lot of the weaknesses when you get into the season and all that too. But I mean, is there what's the biggest offensive question you kind of have at this point when you're looking at this offense?
Yeah, I think both tackle spots are kind of up in the air right now. I know Savell has said pretty much throughout the entire spring, like that was one of their weaknesses last year was offensive line. I mean, obviously they got Wes King, Caden Barnett, Jack Walsh are all three returning starters. Those are three interior guys. But Nate Geiger was starting left tackle. He tore his ACL like 11 snaps into the year against Arizona State. And then so that left tackle and the right tackle are kind of what I'll be looking at like first week of fall camp and just seeing who is taking reps with what group and whatnot. And then also I know I said that I think there's a lot of depth at running back. I'm just curious what the talent level is, I guess, because like, I haven't seen those guys run besides Sam Scott. I haven't really seen any of those guys do anything in a game. So and obviously, like you said, until you get out there, you're not going to know really what you have. And that was a struggle for Wyoming last year. I think they finished 7th or 8th in the Mountain West in rushing offense. And that's not their identity. That's not how they win games is they're not going to air you out. So I think hopefully that's kind of what did I just say? Probably 5 new running backs coming into this room. And you just got to hope that 1 or 2 of them are Harrison Whaley-esque.
Yeah, Harrison Whaley caliber. Other side of the ball, defensively, lost just a lot of dudes, man. Rook Brown, who had the pick six. I think it was the go-ahead pick six against UNM last year. Just a monster play. Wyatt Eckler, who a year before that against New Mexico, he delivered one of the most violent hits I've ever seen on the beat. Like just demolished Dylan Hopkins on a blitz. Like, oh my God. Sebastian Harsh, Keani Parks. What's going on the defensive side of the ball, man? I mean, what are we looking at right now?
Yeah, I think and they lost a lot to graduation too.
Yeah, Eckler was graduation, and
but it's kind of I was like joking about this earlier. Like I think if you got like Savell off the record and you were like, hey, like
Savell off the record sounds like a heck of a time too.
Yeah. He would probably tell you, like, honestly, like it'd be like, hey, you only have 2 returning starters on defense, and he'd probably tell you good. Like just with how they played last year. I'm not knocking any specific guys or anything, but like just with how that unit performed, they had a ton of injuries, tough schedule. I'm not gonna knock them there, but their secondary, I mean, even like that New Mexico game, like you saw it, like the big explosive play defense was just not good. And so I think a lot of that is probably a welcomed sight of change across the board. I mean, they're going to have, like I said, they have Tice Westland and Ben Florentine, both on the defensive line. Those are their only 2 returning starters. So going to have a whole new linebacker core, whole new secondary. Every single safety spot is up for grabs. And then when you talk about question marks on defense, I mean, cornerback's definitely one. Right now, that's kind of the one on defense where that's another one you'll kind of be looking at first couple weeks of fall camp, just because Keani was obviously their returning starter, but the other guys below him haven't really played and they're young. And that's another position that they added to after the spring game. They added a guy from Mercer like a month after the spring game. So a lot to figure out there, but I think just defensively you always wonder, and I'm sure again, if we got him off the record, he would have a much funnier quote than I will. But I think if you asked a head coach that was a former defensive coordinator, how he felt about giving up 45 points or whatever to North Texas or to New Mexico or BYU, I mean, obviously he's not going to be very thrilled with the unit overall. And again, they had a ton of injuries, but still not an acceptable standard, I guess, for that defense here at Wyoming.
Is there one spot on the defense right now that you're kind of looking at and thinking, okay, like, this could definitely be a strength this is like the strength of the defense right now?
Yeah, I think linebacker for sure is
really
that's the deepest it's been in a while. It just in terms of I'd asked Savell probably like second week of spring camp. I was like, how many guys like do you typically want in the rotation for linebackers? Because they only do the 2 linebackers. So he said realistically 4. You'd want a 1 and a 2 at both Mike and Will. But I really do think that they have 5 right now. So Ethan Stolzats, I think if I had to guess, I can do my own mock starting lineup, but Ethan Stolzats I think will start, and I would guess that he'd be the Mike middle linebacker. And then I do think so redshirt freshman Gary Rutherford, he redshirted last year, but he played in 4 games, and I think like Salvell had basically said like if he could go back, he would just not redshirt him. Like there's not really a huge advantage to redshirting guys in today's day and age at a mid-major school. Like it's just kind of the reality. But I think like just from everything I've heard from him, he's supposed to be a star on this defense, according to Salvell. And I think he'll get his shot this year. I would project him as a redshirt freshman starting linebacker at Wyoming. That's my bold take.
I have some quick hits, and I think you've already named a couple of these guys related to the question. But if you had to pick a transfer that will have the biggest impact this season, either side of the ball, who would you pick?
Braden Wilson, Weber State, defensive end. I think he's a funny guy, man. He's one of those guys you interview and you're just like, wow, that was awesome. He's 2-time All Big Sky. I mean, he has all the numbers. He has all the intangibles to be successful in the Mountain West, and that's a position where he should get plenty of chances. But like just on a personal level, like he was telling me he chose. So when he was deciding to go to Weber State, he was deciding between professional rugby, college rugby, or college football. And he was like, well, what one like can I be like the most successful in, and obviously he wanted to get a degree too. But then like he ended up choosing football, but like when you're talking to him, he's just like, you can tell that he's like a rugby guy, because he's just like, I don't care if we're wearing helmets or not. Like, I just want to hurt some guy. Like, I just want people to fear me, and I just like hitting people. And it's just like, that's like when you really dumb it down, like that's like the nuts and bolts of a defensive end. It's like, hey, get to the quarterback.
Any means necessary.
Yeah, that's my sleeper transfer.
If you had to pick a returner that maybe wasn't underused, but wasn't a key player before this year, either side of the ball, who'd you end up picking?
Yeah, I'm gonna say Chris Durr.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he was one of the and you look at when you go on their stats and you see like obviously I think he was like second or third in receiving yards on the team. So that's not a huge like sleeper, I guess, but like in terms of usage, I think he was way underutilized early on in the year, and I Salvo obviously knew that, and so that there was some adjustments made midway through the year to get him targets and get him in open space, and a year of because he was a true freshman last year, like he came in like 160 pounds, like so a year of development, an actual year of off-season training and work and strength and conditioning stuff. I mean, that dude, that's another guy that is going to get probably 8 to 10 targets a game if they had to map it out. Like if we're going to win this game, Gillenborg needs 8 targets, Chris Durr needs 8 targets, Sargent needs 6 targets, and we have to run for 200 yards, whatever it is. But that he would be my main piece of this offense. Like if Wyoming is going to be good, it's Chris Durr is going to have a good year.
You kind of just described it. This was already one of the quick hits. I mean, what does have to happen for Wyoming to make a bowl game this year?
Yeah, I think Caden Anderson has to I don't want to say show more maturity, but he just has to be more consistent, I guess, with he reminds me a lot of like Braden Fowler-Nicolosi at CSU with just kind of, I don't want to say you got thrown in, but like you were just super young when you started playing like meaningful snaps in games. So I think the pressure is going to be a lot higher on him this year, just because last year he was obviously the backup. The season was kind of already lost at that point when he did come in, and then you provide that huge spark against that game in New Mexico. So I think for them and I think that's kind of what a successful season would be in my eyes for Wyoming, is to make a bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
They dodge Boise on the schedule, so I think if they're going bowling, it's because Caden Anderson took them there, and it's going to be super reliant on quarterback play again.
I do want to, you just mentioned the schedule. I do want to roll through the schedule real quick. Open the season at Akron, and then you get Northern Iowa at home. Wyoming gets Northern Iowa at home, so probably should be 2-0 there. And then there is this weirdly potent stretch with the non-conference bleeding into conference. You get Wyoming gets Utah at home, so Devin Dampier returning to the place where he got his first real kind of meaningful snaps. At Colorado, UNLV at home, San Jose State at home, at Air Force, Colorado State at home, border war, at San Diego State, at Fresno State, Nevada at home, and at Hawaii to end it. Again, I personally don't love it when it's this time of year, and people ask me this in June, but do you have a kind of a record prediction at this point? Without the full picture and fall camp and all that, when you probably learn the most.
I'd say I'm just going to play it safe and say 6. I think they can make a bowl game with the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say 7, but you just kind of look at – so I was just saying, like, it's that Akron game is so weird because it's obviously I'm sure you saw their postseason ban.
Yeah.
Which with the timing of that sucks for the players because it was after the portal closed. So they kind of all got stuck there and now they can't really play for anything. And so they're going to be huge favorites there. And that's just going to be a weird place to play. Like, I doubt there's going to be anybody there. It's a Thursday night in August. Like, I don't know. That's a weird one for me, but I think realistically they could make a bowl game. They like I said, they dodge Boise.
Get UNLV at home.
UNLV at home. Air Force.
San Jose State could be decent. Get them at home too.
Yeah, that border war. The CSU games at home. Last ever conference game for a border war.
Yeah,
which will be weird. That'll be an emotional one. And then I don't know. I think, like I said, I think it's doable. I think Utah and Colorado kind of look intimidating on the surface, I guess. But like even last year, they had a gauntlet, and it didn't look like it at the time. Like BYU and Arizona State were both picked, but probably bottom 4 of the Big 12, and
yeah, and then they were basically
last. Yeah, and then were both. I mean, BYU was a game away from the playoffs. Arizona State made the playoffs, so I think they'll take their chances. I think that Utah game will be a really cool matchup. Just obviously old-time conference rivals from back in the day. And I wasn't expecting Coach Prime to be in Boulder for this trip, but here we are. So it should be fun.
Alex, that is all I have, man. I really appreciate your time today. As always, just excellent stuff. You can follow Alex's work at WyoSports.com. Alex, man, looking forward to seeing you in Vegas, man. And maybe, who knows, we'll keep the streak alive and Mountain West Championship on the docket.
Yeah, I'll put it back out.
All right, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you.